The social revolution during the 1960s was a time when the Americans went against the social norms. Today, I'm going to be talking about 4 factors of this time. One of the biggest factors was the Vietnam War. For the fear of spreading communism, the Americans took part in this war. Each month, about 40,000 young American men were called and were sent across the world to go fight in this war. This upset many Americans. During the whole war, 300,000 men were injured, and approximately 58,000 men had died. A lot of people began to question the war and didn't see a point to it, which in turn started the anti-war protests and movement. Many young college students began to fight to end the war with their protests. On October 21, 1967, one of the most memorable protests took place in the Pentagon, with 30,000 students fighting to end the war. This caught many people's attention. I agree with this protest because $25 billion are spent each year for too many deaths and no solution. Another factor during the time was women's rights. Women were usually seen to be cooking, cleaning, or helping out with the kids. They couldn't even do simple things such as get a credit card or go to colleges such as Harvard. As well, job opportunities were very limited as they weren't allowed to be a judge or a doctor. The pay gap was very big back then as women earned 56 cents to every man's dollar. A woman named Betty Friedan created a book called The Feminine Mystique, which caused men and women alike to question what it was like to be a woman and for them to go against what society thought was normal. During this time, as women rebelled against what society thought they should be like, the amount for women's equality had grown tremendously throughout the whole nation. And soon, the National Organization for Women's Rights was born. It was very important that this had happened during this time because without women fighting for their rights back then, we wouldn't be where we're at today. Now, a woman can choose whatever college she wants to go to, and if she wants to get a credit card, she can. As well, a woman is now able to be a doctor or any kind of career she wants to choose and is equal to the male doctor as well. Another factor is civil rights and the fight for Black equality. It's crazy to think that back then Blacks weren't allowed in restaurants and certain transportation. The most well-known way that the Blacks fought for their rights was through peace protests. One example is the Freedom Rides in 1961. Volunteer African Americans hop on a bus in the South in an attempt to desegregate the buses. The Blacks had many nonviolent marches and protests, which helped lead to their freedom. And it led to the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. One very well-known promoter of peace was Martin Luther King Jr. He earned a Nobel Peace Prize in 1964, which some historians question whether he deserves it. I think it's crazy because he contributed so much to this movement and he deserved it. The civil rights movement had caused a lot of change in the 60s and in the end not only brought rights to Blacks, but to all races and genders, and in the end proved that we are all equal. The final factor that I have is excess materialism. Today, many people still enjoy buying new things, but back then, many people were starting to notice a common cycle. They would go to work and earn money, and as soon as they got their money, they would spend it on new things, such as an upgraded refrigerator or new clothes, and then they would go back to work and do the same thing again. Soon, people began to feel very comfortable with their life and started noticing other problems such as the war, women's rights, and civil rights. As well, during this time, people noticed that there were many advertisements with false claims to get them to buy more products. People didn't like this, that they were being lied to and essentially tricked into buying a product. During this time, many books were released that exposed companies for their marketing schemes. As a result of this caused many Americans to rebel against mainstream ways of buying products, and soon people found their own ways to be becoming unique and going against materialism and creating new music and using drugs. Without this time, we wouldn't have such unique, different people in our community, and culture would be different as well as our music. This time really shaped how America is today. The four things that I talked about, the Vietnam War, women's rights, civil rights, and excess commercialism, all contributed to the social revolution of the 1960s because each one of those movements had an impact on the normal society and changed the way we thought and lived during that time.
When I was in the 3rd grade, I thought that I was gay, cause I could draw. My uncle was, and I kept my room straight. I told my mom, tears rushing down my face. She's like, Ben, you've loved girls since before pre-K. Trippin'. Yeah, I guess she had a point, didn't she? Bunch of stereotypes all in my head. I remember doing the math, like, yeah, I'm good at Little League. A preconceived idea of what it all meant. But those that like the same sex have the characteristics. The right-wing conservatives think it's a decision, and you can be cured with some treatment.